This episode is brought to you by Jane, a practice management software and EMR built to support the day-to-day work of running a business. Practitioners know care begins before a client arrives. Jane is here to support every part of that experience with features like online booking, scheduling, and payments. Learn more about Jane at jane.app/demo. And if you're ready to get started, use the code ABMP1MO, that's ABMP, the number 1, MO, for a 1-month grace period on your new account.
Hello and welcome. You are listening to Fully Booked with Elicia Crook on the ABMP Podcast Network. I think having a price rise is a really important way of growing your practice. And it's something that a lot of therapists really struggle with. And so what I'm going to do is actually break this into 2 episodes because I think it's worth the conversation. And I want to make sure that we are really being clear in a process for this and how to really help those objections and really help you take your practice to the next level. You know those moments in treatment where you're noticing something like an old scar and you pause for a second and think, is this relevant? And you decide it's probably, not, and keep going. And often this happens more than we think, which is why I'm really excited to be sharing this with you. We at the Health Leader Co. work with therapists to help them understand and treat scars in a gentle way. And Christine Knox, my business partner, is an educator and trainer who trained in the UK with Americans and is really passionate and really actually on a mission to support the 50 million people a year who receive new scars, plus all the people walking around with older scars that have never been treated as well. So Christine has put together a free 50-minute online class. She walks through 3 ways scars can create pain and restriction in the body, even when they're nowhere near where your client feels it. We're talking fascia, lymphatics, nervous system, all the stuff that's happening in the background that can quietly drive symptoms and slow everything down. And what I really love about her approach is that it's not intense, it's not complicated, there's no digging in or trying to break things up. It's a really gentle and simple way that kind of just makes sense when you see it. Christine has trained hundreds of practitioners to get amazing results, especially with post-surgery clients, using the kind of touch that actually calms the nervous system down and treating the whole person. So if you've ever felt a bit unsure around scar work, or maybe you're missing something with your results, then it's definitely worth a watch. And you can go to gohealthleaderco.com/3 ways. It's a free class on the 3 ways that scars can actually create pain and restriction in the body and what you can do about it. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how to raise prices and still keep your clients happy. We're going to talk about one of those business topics that makes us often feel wildly uncomfortable, and that's all about charging more money and raising your prices. What I've discovered and what I found, and from my own experience, is that most therapists don't avoid price rises because, they just want to avoid it, or because they're lazy or they don't understand. Often we avoid it because it feels personal. We worry that if we do it, our clients will judge us, and that the worry is that then people will leave and will come across greedy. And if we're honest, a lot of us would rather do almost anything else than have an awkward money conversation from the front desk. But here's the thing. If you are serious about building a sustainable, long-term business, if you want to serve people well, if you want to stay in this industry long-term, then at some point, this is a skill you need to learn, just as all the fabulous skills that you have collected in your time as a therapist. So today I'm going to walk you through why you need to do it, what happens if you don't, what happens if you do, and help you figure out how to know what you should be charging and the steps to raise your prices while still keeping your clients happy. So first of all, let's ask the question, why do we even need to raise our prices? I do speak to a lot of therapists who have a beautiful heart of service that are like, and they'll say to me, Leash, if I could do this for free, I would. I just really want everyone to have access to massage. And the problem with this is that it doesn't actually help us to grow a successful business. if we don't increase our prices, our costs that we incur as business owners continue to rise. So everything costs more than a few years ago. Rent costs more, oils cost more, laundry costs more, energy costs more, booking software costs more, insurance costs are up, training costs are up, life just costs more. So if you're still charging what you charged 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, chances are you're actually earning less now, even if the dollar amount looks the same. And this is where therapists can get caught out, because you might think, well, I'm still charging, $90, so that's fine. But if $90 a few years ago, and we look at the costs that have incurred now, it actually can feel more like 75 or 80 in real terms. And so you're not actually standing still. The business is going backwards. And that's why learning how to raise your prices sustainably and with confidence is really important skill to learn. It's not about being greedy. It's not about trying to squeeze your clients. It's actually about just keeping your business viable and even thriving, because a business isn't a hobby. And sometimes we have to be honest about that, because a hobby is something you do for enjoyment and it doesn't make you money, and nor should it. But a business should make us money. And if it's not paying you properly, then it's not set up like a business. And if your business can't support you, then eventually it won't be able to support your clients either. Okay, so let's look at, why do people not raise their prices? Usually it's because they know they should do it, but it's usually just fear, and fear of judgment, fear of upsetting people. What if clients leave? What if someone will think, wow, that's expensive? What if people say no? And maybe even a deeper fear that you don't feel worth it. And this could be a really big one too, because fear of what happens if I do it can also be like, well, what if the bookings suddenly dry up? And so a lot of therapists will keep their prices the same, because staying the same feels safer than change. And even if the same is quietly draining the life out of the business. And honestly, this is where leadership comes in, because love and care are beautiful qualities in the treatment room and help your clients to feel that you get them. But leadership is what happens when we need the business. James, my other business partner, talks about this in terms of hats. So when we step into the treatment room, we have a hat that is kindness and love and empathy and connection and wisdom and knowledge and experience. And then part of running a business is leaving that hat on the table and stepping out to the reception area, or, the reception area in your mind, and putting on a different hat that is logical, that looks for the outcome, that says, what do I need to do in order to make my business work for me? And it means that you can still be a beautiful therapist in the treatment room and lead your business like a professional. I love this analogy of going to the grocery store. Have you ever been to the grocery store and had the person behind the counter apologize profusely for the fact that your peas cost more this week than they did last week? And the truth is, that has never happened. Yeah, it's a furphy, right? It's just ridiculously crazy, because it's not their job as the provider of the goods to apologize or make judgment on what the prices are, because the supermarket is there, or the grocery store is just there to make money based on what they're doing, which is running a business. It's actually our job as a consumer that if we go in for a $30 shop, or if you do a $300 shop, it's based on your needs and your budget, which is just like massage. And I think that this is the bit that people don't talk about enough, because if you don't raise your prices, you start feeling stretched and even resentful, because you're working hard but actually not getting properly paid. You might be busy, but the numbers aren't improving. And, you might be avoiding holidays because you feel like you can't afford to take time off. Maybe you feel like you're giving too much and giving very little back. And over time, this leads to that resentment, which I reckon then sort of creates burnout. And it's not because we don't love the work that we do, but because the business side isn't supporting the life that you want. And that's what matters, because being fully booked and exhausted is not the goal. Being busy and broke, also not the goal. Being booked out and quietly annoyed every time someone asks for another appointment, also not the goal. So let's look at, what is the goal? What is it that we want instead? We want to run a business that will give us a life outside of the business as well. So before we choose a number, we actually need to know what it costs to run your business. And we also need to know, what is it that I want to earn in the next 12 months? And so this is really just a fun game like Monopoly, where you pull out your phone and you open up the calculator and you have a look and go, okay, how much do I want to pay myself in the next 12 months? And then you have a look and go, okay, well, how many treatments a week would I need to do, or do I want to do per week in order to do that? And how many weeks of the year would I like to have off? Now, in Australia, we only work a 48-week year. I know, wild, right? But we are called the land of the long weekend for a reason. And so we have 4 weeks of annual leave a year. And if you're an employee, that is paid leave that you are expected and required to take, right? And I kind of love business because often we take the limiting constraints of being an employee and we put them on being a business. And the truth is that we get to decide what we want to do. And so if we kind of just step back from our business for a second, rather than being in it and thinking about our clients and what will they think, and just go, I'm just going to take a step back and go, what is it that I want to charge? So what is it that I want to actually earn? Maybe you want to take home $500 a week. Maybe you want to take home $2,000 a week. There's no right or wrong answer. The truth is just going, well, what is it that you need to live on, pay tax on and all that kind of stuff. So let's just have a look at this for an example. If you see 20 clients a week, which is an average amount. Not everyone wants to see that many. Some people want to see 30, 35, 40. There's no right or wrong, but I'm just going to go on average here. If you charge $130 a session, it's $2,600 per week. And if you work 48 weeks of the year, that's $124,800, which is pretty cool for a part-time income. If you see 20 clients a week, you're probably going to be spending at least 30 to 35 hours producing that delivery. By the time you're washing towels or, preparing your space, doing some marketing, making sure you're updating your admin, if we could make $124,500 from a part-time income, you'd be like, sign me up, baby. I'm in. Yes, please. I think sometimes what we get trapped in is what I call the cookie jar approach. And because we're working individually each day and each week, we don't see the business as a whole. We see the business as, I need petrol or gas in my car now, or I need to go to the groceries to buy my peas now. So what I'll do is just take out one piece of the cookie, one cookie from the jar, and I'll take that bit. And then the next day we're like, I need to pay this, so I just take that bit. And then I need to take, so I just take that bit. Which means we never actually see our business from the big picture perspective. We only ever see it from right here, right now, what I need. And that's called living hand to mouth. And yet we have the opportunity as practitioners to actually make a really decent income. We actually have the opportunity to make a big impact. And I sometimes think about, people will often be like, I want to make massage affordable to everybody. And what I've found in, over the years that I've been working both as a coach and also as a practitioner, is that when people pay for something, they are more likely to value and respect it. And often what we'll do is we'll take a couple of people from our database and we will generalize our entire database based on those couple of people. But the truth is that many of our clients have dual incomes, health insurance, gym memberships. Like, they're actually living in alignment with their values by coming to see you simply because you're part of their self-care regime. Price has not a lot to do with it. And when you charge well for what you do, you actually have the capacity to serve those that perhaps couldn't necessarily afford your services. And I'll give you an example of this. We did this at my clinic when we raised our prices. We had a big jump from what a smaller amount to they're like, right, we're going to go into those $100 amounts. We had, there was a little bit of pushback from my team because they were like, what are we going to do with these people who we know can't afford treatment? And I also knew that if we gave it to them for free, it wouldn't serve either them or our business. And yet I could hear the heart of service behind the questions that my team was asking. And what we chose to do was we had a scholarship, essentially, for one person per therapist per quarter. So we had somebody that they had identified as needing treatment, but perhaps couldn't get right to where we were. And what we would do is charge them concession 30-minute appointment and give them an hour. Now, this is beautiful because it's boundaried, it's clear, and it's done in private. So we didn't advertise this. We just had a quiet conversation with the person who was involved. And what it meant was that we could charge well for our services in our area, and there were plenty of people in our area willing and happy and very, very okay to pay what we were charging. And like I said, there were some people who were struggling, and so we did something to help support them. Others, we just made their appointment 45 minutes instead of an hour, or extended it from 4 weeks to 6 weeks. Many people could figure out what they needed in relation to their time and budget. It wasn't up to us to do that. So when we're putting this together, we want to make sure that we know exactly what our business costs us, like rent, electricity, power, towels, oil, software, bank fees, FPOS, insurance, associations, CPD, tax, super equipment, like all of these things. We want to literally just get really, really clear on what are all these things. Plus, include as an expense, what do you want to pay yourself? Because then you're starting to think on what you want rather than what you think clients might tolerate. And they're two very different things. I use this analogy sometimes that if I had a stereo and in one hand I've got a $900 stereo and the other hand I've got a $15 stereo, which based on that do you think is higher quality? And the answer is, of course, it's a $900 one, even though you know nothing more about it. We just have an assumption that if it's more expensive, it's better quality. Kind of interesting, right? So as we wrap up part 1, I just want to leave you with this. Raising prices is not about being greedy or pushing people away. It's actually about building a business that can support you, your energy, and the level of care that you want to give your clients. Because if we keep undercharging, eventually something gives, and usually that's you. So take a moment to really sit with this. Where might you be holding back? Where do you already know it's time for a shift? Because in part 2, we're going to get really practical. I'm going to walk you through exactly how to raise your prices in a way that feels good, gives you a powerful strategy and framework, and helps you keep most of your clients on side, which will help to set your business up for the long-term success. And I will see you there.